And we continue with World Floorball Summit with Mr. Sami Kalaja, who is a top expert in sports and exercise learning, teaching and coaching. And without further ado, Sami's topic today is learning and developing skills in floorball. So Sami, welcome.
Thank you and good afternoon everybody. I want to thank Mikko Pohjola for the invitation. It's a great honor to speak in this kind of summit. So my topic is skill acquisition and skill adaptation in floorball. And first, I would say there should be a theory, a background theory in coaching. If coaches are trusting only individual experiences, then the coaching might go totally wrong direction. So there has to be a theory in the background. This doesn't mean that coaches should be scientists. No, not at all, but they should know the basic principles of the theories, how people learn, how people develop motor skills. Motor skill training is actually brain training. Muscles are stupid. Muscles are only doing what the brain commands them to do. And as you can see from this picture, it is easier to learn motor skills in the childhood. But you can also see it is never too late to learn. Learning is a little bit different in the early ages than in the later phases, but still it is possible to learn new skills during the entire lifespan. There will take place different adaptations in brain when players are training motor skills. Some of these adaptations are structural and some are functional, and both are very important. But what is important also to remember is that this process takes its time. There are no shortcuts in learning. As you can see from this picture, some adaptations, they happen immediately when players start to train after a couple of seconds. For example, the neurotransmitters, their amount will increase, but usually it takes days, and as you can see from here, even years to learn. So coaches must be patient. They must understand that to learn, to really learn, it is a long-lasting process that might take, as I told you, several years in some cases. 3 cornerstones in skill learning are the amount of training, variability, and information. There is no other way to learn motor skills in floorball or in any sport than actually do the training. Mental training is, you can support training with imaginary training, you can watch videos, that's good, but nothing can compensate the actual doing. And how much training is needed to learn skills? Here are some numbers from Keith Davids, who said that after 3,000 repetitions, the skill will be in some satisfactory level. After 20,000 repetitions, the skill is quite good, and after 100,000 repetitions, the skill is adaptable, so you can use it in different situations, in different environments. Variability enhances learning, and there are two main explanations. First is that the neural deficiency decreases. That means we can get more out of our muscles. Human beings can never use their muscles 100%. There is also always a little buffer. But if the training has variability, then this neural deficiency is smaller. And another reason why variability in training is that neural network thickens. Information, third part. The secret in skill learning in floorball is the kinesthetic sensation. How does it feel to do dribbling? How does it feel to do the shot? How does it feel, goalkeeper, to do the save? This sensation is in the core of learning. And the athletes, they need knowledge of results. Was the attempt successful or not? And also knowledge of performance. Both are needed, but especially important is this knowledge of results. I will go into this a little bit deeper. First, why is the amount of training so important? There is stuff called myelin in our axons, in our brain and nervous cells. And this myelin insulates the axon. You can compare it to electric wire where there is this cord around the wire. And if there is myelin, then the signal, the nerve impulse goes faster and more accurate to the target. If there is no myelin in unmyelinated fibers, the velocity for this signal is something like 0.5 to 2 meters per second. So it is the velocity of walking or jogging. But if there is much myelin, then this velocity is 70 to 120 meters per second. So it's the speed of a race car. And this myelinization does not take place immediately. It takes time. It takes, like I said, in some cases, many years to build up this myelin. So we need a lot of training. And this is one of the take-home messages for everyone, to check out how much there is actual repetitions in trainings and how much there are players standing in the queue and waiting for their turn. Why variability in training? Floorball is not played in laboratory. Every game is unique. Every opposite team is unique. So there has to be adaptability. And evidence indicates that if there is variability in movement control, it facilitates adaptation both in learning and in performance. That means if training is repeating exactly the same movement time after time, that is not good for learning. That actually can harm the learning. when a new baby is born, in his or her brain will start synaptogenesis, that is the formation of synaptic connections, so connections between brain cells. And this is life-lasting process, starts in the childhood and goes all the way into adult life. And some of these connections are strengthened and some are taken away, this so-called pruning. And now, depending what kind of training players have been doing, that decides what kind of neural network they have in their brains, what kind of connections they have between their brain cells. Here is this synaptogenesis in pictures. From picture A, there is original situation, and as you can see in the picture B, when new skill is trained, there will come a new connection between cells. And when this training is continued, this connection gets bigger, more strong. And as you can, if you compare the picture B and C, in the left side of the picture, you can see one connection has vanished, has gone away. If a skill is not trained, then these connections are lost. Use it or lose it. Only those connections that we use, they will stay alive. Of course, we are happy that this process of pruning is not very fast. If you have learned to do some skill, then you don't forget it very soon. But the message from here is that you should rehearse the skill every now and then. Here you can see two examples of brains. On the left-hand side, there is a picture of brain that has been training with variability. So there are many connections between cells. And in the right-hand picture, there is example of players' brain where the training has been boring, monotonous, not with variation, not with variability. In our university in Jyväskylä, the fastest connections that has been found in brain research are after 5 training units. So learning is not happening very fast, and coaches should understand it takes time. In this case, the minimum is 5 training units. We have in our muscles and in our nervous system different kind of motor units. One motor unit is the nerve and all the muscle cells that the nerve is firing. There are slow motor units that are very in endurance, but the contraction speed is slow, and then there are fast, fatigue resistant and fast fatigable motor units. And in one muscle there are several units, and players are using these motor units in the order you can see on the bottom of the page. First we use these slow, then fast, and then fast fatigable. Now, after training, the player's nervous system adapt so that the synchronization of these motor units and their firing will get better. And also so-called doublets, when the muscle cells are contracting, and when they are contracting again, this time period between two contractions gets smaller. So within this mechanism, we get more out of our muscles. We get closer to the 100%. In floorball, it's very important to accelerate fast, in some cases, to run fast, to do fast shots. We need these fast motor units, and we need this good synchronization between motor units. Variability, there are different kinds of variabilities. There are variability of practice, there are movement variability, and performance outcome variability. We want that the number 3, the outcome variability is small. We want to do the goal, but we can do it in many different ways. So the same endpoint will be reached with different coordination models. What does it mean in practice? In the training, there can be variability within the movements of action, within the different shots, different skills in floorball. The physical context in which the action takes place, so there can be different size of playing arenas, different surfaces of the floor, and also the situation in which the action is performed. There can be audience, there can be pressure, there can be different lighting, and so on. Some examples from research to explain why variation is important. This is one classical study from 1960s from Russia, where they studied world elite level pistol shooters, and they noticed that the good shooters, they had a lot of movement in the shoulder joint and in the elbow joint, but these movements were so-called complemented movements or compensatory movements, and the result was that the wrist was stable and the aiming was successful. With novice, not that good shooters, shoulder was stable, elbow was stable, but there was much movement in the wrist joint, and they couldn't shoot as accurately than the elite shooters. So in the elite performance, there is a lot of variation. A couple of examples from basketball. In one study, they studied the muscle activities in free throw, and the highest variability in muscle activation was in expert players. So the expert used different activation models time after time when they were executing the free throw. Novices were doing always with the same model and with less variability. And what was interesting, when these expert players didn't shoot, the ball didn't go into the basket, then there was less variability. So those misses, with those misses, there was less variability than in those successful throws. And as you can see from the lower example of research, also from basketball free throw, not all players achieved success when their throwing technique was close to their average pattern. So the message is that experts, they are doing every time in a slightly different way, but the end result, that is, there is no variability. Ball goes into the basket. This is one excellent infographic from Rob Gray, and I don't go very deeply into this, but if you look at the left side, you see how it is possible to design the practice with variability or without variability. In blocked training, in this example from baseball, in this kind of training, first the players are doing all the hits, all the throws, and after that all the hits, and after that all the catches. If the practice is designed in a serial way, then first one throw, then one hit, then one catch, hit, a throw, hit, catch, throw, hit, catch, and so on. The best from the learning point of view is this random practice where there are throws, hits, and catches, but in totally random order. With children and with novices, it's good to start with blocked kind of training, but with better players, it's absolutely better way to use this random design. And of course, within skill, there can be, for example, different ball velocities. What is this optimal level of variation or noise? It depends on the athlete. So what is the natural variability? Children and novices, there is naturally more variability in their performance, so it doesn't have to be that much more. But for the expert players, there should be more variability. And it depends how the athlete reacts to the variability, because if there is variability, then there will be a lot of mistakes, and how frustrating this is or not, it depends on the player. And it's good to involve the athletes with their own solutions. The third cornerstone is information. And one danger in skill training in floorball is overthinking and this phenomenon called verbal shadowing, which leads to bad performance and bad learning. Verbal overshadowing is that we are trying to verbally explain something that is difficult to explain. And there's this old saying, those who teach cannot do. But if the players are trying to describe a skill, that will impair the retention of the skill. And there will be a shift from novices, from children. They start to learn skills from their declarative memory representations, but later this knowledge will go to the unconscious parts of the brain, and it is difficult to put in the words. So it's a big mistake to ask technical details of the floorball skills from the players. This old fairy tale, paralysis by analysis, where the centipede lost its ability to move when it started to think in which order it is moving its legs. It quite nicely describes what is happening also with floorball players if they are thinking too much of the execution of the skill. We have two kind of memories. We have conscious and unconscious memories. When we are remembering facts or life events, then we are using conscious memory. But this memory for motor skills is in the unconscious area of brain, and this is very important to understand in floorball coaching. It's better to do and to learn and not think too much. Athletes need information, they need knowledge of performance, they need knowledge of results, and this knowledge of results is especially important. The player needs to know whether his or her performance was successful or not. And it's also good to remember that too much information is bad for learning. A good rule is that after every 5th trial, the coach will provide the feedback. And it's better to give no feedback at all than to give too much feedback. And like I said, the kinesthetic sensation is important. The feeling the athlete gets, the player gets from the skill. And if the feedback comes too soon, then this sensation is not organized. If the feedback comes too late, it's already gone. The feedback has no power. The optimal time frame is something like 5 to 10 seconds after the performance. In floorball, it's very usual to watch videos, and in the name of learning tactics or strategies, it's good to watch videos, for example, in the following day. But if we are talking about motor skills, then watching videos next day, that's waste of time. So here are my references, and now we have a couple of minutes. If you have any questions or comments, please.
So at the moment, there's no questions from the audience, but I would like to ask you, Sami, in your experience in floorball, in top-level floorball, if you look at the coaching that we do, where are we sort of in that process? Because this is really good to know. As a coach, it is better to give no feedback than too much feedback and so on. And I think we are a developing sport in that matter. How would you or what are the main focuses or main findings you have from our sport, floorball coaching, in that sense?
I have been working with different sports, and I think floorball is in a good way. Mikka, Lamu, Jakke Rantala, they are doing very good job. And the role of coach is not to give that much advices. The role of the coach is more to design the environment, to design the different tasks, and give learning the space that it needs. But my findings of floorball are very positive, and I think it's one of the top sports in our country at the moment. They have understood quite well this ecological dynamics, which is the leading theory in motor skill learning.
All right, thank you very much, Sami. Very interesting presentation with a lot of information to digest. Hopefully not too much with my understanding, but I will try to go through it again. But very interesting, perfect. Thank you so much.